Good evening. I'm Lois Nishikawa, and I will be your MC this evening. Welcome to the Makawao Honganji Hatsubon Firstborn Memorial Services for 2024. Thanking you in advance for either turning off your cell phone or silencing it. Thank you very much. Hatsubon service is a special memorial service held in memory of loved ones lost during the past year since the last obon. For the family and friends of the departed loved ones, Hatsubon Firstborn Memorial Service is a precious opportunity to reflect upon the continued influence of our departed loved ones and to express our gratitude for their being a part of our lives. Reverend Carey will officiate today's service, which begins with the invocation San Bujo, the three respectful callings.
We respectfully call upon the Tathagata Amida, the Tathagata Shakyamuni, the Tathagatas of the 10 directions, to enter this place of practice, joyfully scattering flowers of welcome. Namo Amida.
Namo Amida. Namo Amida. Namo Amida.
Reverend Carey will now lead the chanting of Amida Kyo, the sutra on the Buddha Amida, one of the 3 Pure Land Sutra in the Jodo Shinshu Honganji tradition. After performing the Todai Ban, ascending to the ceremonial dais. The Todai Ban ritual is performed for major services and includes the 3 kneeling bows, the most formal bow in Honganji tradition, anointing robes and vestments with powdered incense, the offering of incense 2 times by the priest, the only time you will see this. After the sutra chanting, Reverend Carey will perform the Godai Ban, ritual for descending from the ceremonial dais.
Namanda, Utsunamanda, Utsunamanda, Utsunamanda.
During the sutra chanting, the names of each hatsubon memorial will be read aloud. For those attending here in person, family and friends of each departed loved one are encouraged to come up to the front of the hall to offer incense as a gesture of respect and an expression of gratitude. Please feel free to use any of the 3 incense burners at the front of the altar. For those of you joining the service online, please reflect upon the influence of the departed loved ones in your life and express gratitude in the way that is most appropriate for you. After the hatsubon families and friends have offered incense, we invite all other attendees to offer incense in the memory of their loved ones. If you are not able to come up to the front, please raise your hand and a portable incense burner will be brought to you at your seat. Firstborn Memorial Hatsubon services in the memory of the late Mr. Thomas Kiyoshi Imoto. Buddhist name Shakusho Shin, born into the Pure Land on August 28, 2019. The late Mr. John Yutaka Kawa, Buddhist name Shaku Nenho, born into the Pure Land on July 30, 2021.
Tanju shomaku komyo bokurak yushari hon bokurak bokudo shishiju nanjun shishiju namo shishiju goju kaize shiho shusho imyo.
The late Mr. Warren Terumi Nishida, Buddhist name Shakuko A, born into the Pure Land on June 25, 2023. The late Mr. Harold Haruo Kamitani, Buddhist name Shaku Hokai, born into the Pure Land on August 3, 2023. Hari shako shaku shume no nigon jiki shichi churenge daisho shari shoshiki shoko shiki yoko shaku shiki shako byaku shiki byako mimyo gopen shari ho kokura kokudo joju myose kudoku shokon Ushari Hondi Berkudo Chosa Tengaku Ofon Iju Shuya Rukujini Umandara Kenkoku Shujo Joi Shonan Kakui Ekoku Joshu Nyoke Uyo Taho Juman Makubun Sokui Jikiju Gento The late Mrs. Shirley Takahashi, Buddhist name Shakuji Ko, born into the Pure Land on September 25, 2023.
座敷市長白虎空弱オムシャリ車両員が空明市長聖書首長中夜
The late Mr. Kiyoshi Kazui John Fukushima, Buddhist name Shakujo Myo, born into the Pure Land on October 7, 2023. The late Mrs. Florence Sakai, Buddhist name Shakuzen Yu, born into the Pure Land on January 8, 2024. The late Mrs. Hanako Doris Hashimoto, Buddhist name Shakuni Ki Kyo, born into the Pure Land on January 17, 2024. The late Mr. Ralph Katsuji Sakamura, Buddhist name Shakusho Shin, born into the Pure Land on April 6, 2024. The late Mrs. Lorene DeCoit, Buddhist name Shakuni Kosei, born into the Pure Land on April 26, 2024.
三段阿弥陀仏不可思議功徳東方逆部阿宿微分修味総分大修味分修味公分妙音
Representing the Makawao Honganji Mission, Temple Council President Ms. Karen Ishizu.
遍布三千大千世界千上軸上妙法修上等身絶称三不可思議功徳一切諸仏諸行人形シャリホト南方世界ウニジ学校仏妙法公仏大円見仏修味等仏無料精進仏妙世の高価者修正仏覚王報告水工場絶相遍布三千大千世界雪上軸分妙世等修等身絶称三不可思議功徳一切諸仏諸行人形シャリホト西方世界無量十分無量総分無量等分大法仏大妙仏法僧仏上皇仏妙世道高価者修正仏覚王報告水工場絶相遍布三千大千世界雪上軸分妙道修上等身絶称三不可思議功徳一切諸仏諸行人形シャリホト北方世界右辺見仏最小法仏大仏日照仏無量仏妙世と高価者修正仏覚王報告水工場絶相遍布三千大千世界雪上軸分妙道修正等身絶称三不可思議功徳一切諸仏諸行人形シャリホト下方世界ウシシ仏妙門仏妙法仏松那仏法道仏自法仏妙世道高価者修正仏覚王報告水工場絶相遍布三千大千世界雪上軸分妙道修上等身絶称三不可思議功徳一切諸仏諸行人形シャリホト上方世界右本能仏宿王仏工場仏高校仏大円見仏雑式法華本心仏シャラ十王仏法華徳仏見一切義仏妙修味仙仏妙世と高価者修正仏覚王報告水工場絶相遍布三千大千世界雪上軸分妙道修正等身絶称三不可思議功徳一切諸仏諸行人形シャリホト能量意運が学校妙意一切諸仏諸行人形シャリホト脈分前南四千妙人門水小文小説妙有教妙者税小前南四千妙人会一切諸仏諸行年解読空大天法安六から三脈三宝大税公者利本妙道解答真珠が五義小文小説者利本脈人意 北が根北が東北が緑章阿弥陀仏国者聖上人と海徳部大天法安の二が三脈三宝大大非国土脈一生脈根性脈東小成功者利法小善男子善女に脈不信者応東北が超非国土者利法女が根者小三小文不可思議空徳非小仏道役小説が不可思議空徳未差前後釈迦無二仏如意人難経ルシシのシャバ国土王辱悪性本辱現辱煩悩辱修上辱上辱中徳は信太三脈三宝大小修上宣税一切世間安心司法シャリ法投資が王公辱悪性行使難心徳は信太三脈三宝大一切世間摂氏難心司法正義人難無摂氏教育シャリ法一生ビグ一切世間天人アシュラト文文小説暗義真珠祭に国戦阿弥陀経
Reverend Carey will now read the English translation of The Letter on White Ashes, which was written by Renyo Shonin, the 8th Wonshu chief priest of the Honganji in the 15th century.
In deeply contemplating the transient nature of life, nothing is more fleeting than our journey through this world. It is as an all too short dream. Life swiftly passes, and how many have lived for even 100 years? Whether I go before others or whether others go before me, whether it is to be today or whether it is to be tomorrow, who is to know? Those who are sent off before us are as countless as the fragile drops of dew. Though in the morning we may be radiant with health, in the evening we may be white ashes. When the winds of impermanence blow, our eyes are closed forever. As we breathe our last breath, our face loses its color. Our loved ones gather and lament, but to no avail. The body is then carried out to an open field and disappears in smoke which smolders through the night, leaving only white ashes. Is there any expression for such a sad plight? This fragile nature of human existence underlies both the young and old, and we should therefore all the sooner turn our hearts to the singularly important matter of true and real life. We should recite the Nembutsu upon having completely entrusted all that we are to the Buddha Amida. In gratitude, we acknowledge these words humbly and respectfully. Humbly and respectfully. No. Anakashiko. Anakashiko. Test.
Please join me in welcoming our guest speaker this evening, Reverend Ronald Kobata. Reverend Kobata is a Tokudo, an ordained priest, and certified teacher, Kyoshi, in the Jodo Shinshu Honganji Ha tradition. Reverend Kobata has served temples in Hawaii, including Makawao Honganji 2001 to 2004, Kahului Honganji, and Hawaii Betsuin, and the continental USA. Reverend Kobata retired from ministry in 2020.
The swell microphones here. Test.
Well, good evening, and thank you for your presence in coming together to observe this year's Makawao Honganji hatsubon. to just get things into a certain perspective or context, how many of you were here for this year's Makawao Honganji hatsubon for the first time? How many of you are attending this Makawao Honganji hatsubon service for the first time? Can you raise your hands? Okay, I'm just trying to trick you. Because everybody's hand should have gone up. Regardless whether you were here last night for the previous evening's hatsubon, for this evening's hatsubon. At this time, at this place, we're all here for the first time. Get it? And also, how would you respond if someone were to ask, what in Buddhist tradition happens after we die? What in the Honganji Buddhist tradition happens after we die? Any responses, any thoughts, guesses? My response would be, we have memorial services. That's the tradition. Hatsubon is one of those traditions that we've been following for generations. But the question also might be, why? Why do we have memorial services? Well, so you can support the temple. No. So the priest would have a livelihood. No, but this is how, in my view, Buddhism spread throughout Japan through the institution or introduction of the memorial service tradition, of anniversaries and so forth, and all the different customs around that. Because, as you might recall or be aware of, in Japan, nobody goes to church on Sundays, right? Well, technically, you can go every day if you wanted to, but they don't have the custom of weekly, religious gatherings, services at the temple. Priests would go house to conduct various memorial observances, but the custom of coming together once a week, whether it's Sunday or not, is not common in Japan. So we've acculturated here in this country to the new surroundings, and as a result, began to have weekly Sunday gatherings at the temple. I heard this really neat explanation from a professor at UW Manoa, Dr. George Tanabe, where he had heard one of the reasons why they began the custom of weekly Sunday services at the temples, in Hawaii anyway, began because some of the plantation workers, from Japan who are Buddhists, were noticing, their peers or their fellow workers, were getting Sundays off. And so they say, hey, what's up with this? How come they get Sundays off? And the manager explained, well, they're Christian and they go to church on Sunday. And so the resourceful Buddhist followers said, okay, we'll go to temple on Sunday. Give us the Sunday off. I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought that was a neat explanation. How we adapt to new cultures, new situations. And this is just part of how Buddhism has continued to spread from its origins in India throughout Asia. It introduced itself into new cultures and began to adjust according to the new host cultures. They didn't go into a new culture saying, you got to change and you got to become this way because this is the truth. It's okay. Well, anyway, this evening, I'm very honored and privileged to join you. And I thank Reverend Carrie Kiyohara for giving me this opportunity to reconnect with the Makawao Honganji Sangha. So, to begin, so I'm not a techie at all, so I have to rely on Sensei for all those technical adjustments that he can do. And so he helped prepare the slides that I'll be referring to this evening. So I'll begin with slide number 1. Is it up there?
Yes.
I don't have eyes behind my head. Okay? And so you'll notice the explanation of what I've adopted in lieu of what some people might refer to as a sermon, or, more commonly we refer to the English messages anyway as Dharma talks. And that came from, in my view, the Japanese expression for Buddhist messages given at gatherings as ho-wa, ho-wa. And those two characters translate into English as ho is Dharma and wa is talk. So to speak on the Dharma. And then it's, that's the term we adopted, so. But I decided maybe I'll come up with another expression for ho-wa or Dharma talk or sermon, and that is, as listed there, sob story, SOB story. So, what do you think SOB stands for? You don't have to worry, I'm not going to censor it. Whatever you think of it as, that's your thought. For me, SOB stands for sense of being. Stories that give us a sense of being alive. Okage-sama de. In gratitude. This is how we listen to the Dharma, and we begin to realize a sense of being alive. And that sense of being alive awakens a sense of gratitude for having been born into human life. As difficult it is, so some of you familiar with the recitation we call the 3 treasures. The first line begins, hard it is to be born into human life. Now we're living it. Difficult it is to hear it. The teachings of the Blessed One, but now we hear it. And challenges us, if we do not awaken in this present life, here and now, when will we have this opportunity again? So it gives us that opportunity, encouragement to listen, to awaken. So the next slide, please. And for that, I'm referring to a quote, supposedly, of the founder of our Jodo Shinshu tradition, who was known as Shinran. And we've since given him the title Shonin, which can be translated, as some people have, as saint. Shinran Shonin is considered, even though that was not his intention to start a new school of Buddhism, but as they developed a following, they eventually organized and became and established what we call the Honganji, to perpetuate and preserve the teachings of the insight of Shinran Shonin's appreciation of the Buddha Dharma. But anyway, one of his disciples, I'll call him, after Shinran passed, decided that he better kind of help people remember what Shinran had taught. So he put together a little booklet in that highlighted some of the main insights, as this disciple anyway picked it up, that Shinran shared. And so the first paragraph of the first chapter of that text, called Tanisho in Japanese, in English it's been translated as A Record and Lament of the Divergences, begins with this passage that I'll be quoting. And if you want to read along with me, please don't hesitate, but you're welcome to. But anyway, alive with the inconceivable working of Amida's vow, I shall realize birth in the Pure Land. The moment you entrust yourself thus to the vow, so that the mind set upon saying the Nembutsu arises within you, you are immediately brought to share in the benefit of being grasped by Amida, never to be abandoned. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. So I don't know if that was intentional by the writer to begin this text with this passage. But for those of you familiar with the English translation that is published in what we call the collected works of Shinran, it doesn't begin with alive. I've substituted the opening word or line. Instead of it says saved by the inconceivable working of the vow. So I substituted alive. And I'll go into why I chose to do that. But that's my sense of how our spiritual awakening is experienced. It's a sense of coming alive. And we would add in gratitude. Or that's why Reverend Carey is so creative to come up with a little catchphrase, just say mahalo. Because in our tradition we would just say, or as Shinran was supposed to have encouraged, just say the Nembutsu. So mahalo is the Hawaiian expression or translation of Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, the mind of the Buddha. This is the awakening that we begin to realize that gives us a sense of being alive. So to illustrate this a little more, I've been sharing this, what I titled Hawaii Story. Okay, Hawaii Story. It could have happened anywhere on the planet, but it just happened that I had heard it in Hawaii, so that's what I titled it whenever I used it. I call it the Hawaii Story. And I heard this when I was at the Kahuli Honganji, one of the members shared it with me. And maybe if that involves any of you, you could correct me if I misunderstood it. But the story goes, a local person was sitting at the inner island terminal in Honolulu, waiting to catch a flight back to Maui. And so, as he's sitting there, he's just sitting in the waiting area, and he happened to overhear a conversation behind him. And he heard one person turn and to the next and say, I came to Hawaii to die. And so the local guy got surprised and kind of wondering, what's going on here? So evidently, he leaned over to follow the conversation. And then as he's listening, it dawned on him. Okay, what do you think? Okay, well, I'll get to this. So he began to realize that he had overheard a visitor that had just come in from Australia. That's the hint. Having come from Australia, we would say he speaks with an Australian accent. So in other words, in our pronunciation, he said, I came to Hawaii today. But the Australian person expressed it as I came to Hawaii to die. Yeah, I think it's a nice, cute story. But to me, it reflects the idea that how, we become aware of how conditioned we are in terms of our perceptions. The local guy heard what he heard. The visitor said what he said. So how we express ourselves, how we see things and hear things and feel about things, it's all conditioned from our own individual experiences through which we perceive things. You mean, well, I don't want to get too political, but I can't help it at this time of the year. But I can't comprehend how the ex-potus, that's what I call him. I don't like to use his name. I hope I'm not offending any of you who are leaning that way, but the ex-potus, you know, how he can generate such support. You know, to be elected even once was inconceivable. And to even consider that he's running again. Go Kamala. I'm not supposed to do that, right? This is 5-0 jeopardizing the 501c3 and all that. But anyway, so how do you explain these divergences of views, of ideas, of feelings and thoughts? Yeah, we're all finite, fallible human beings that we experience things differently. But to realize that conditioned nature of our existence is part of the awakening process. And so this is where I feel that listening to the teachings are helping us to become more reflective, more introspective, and in a way we could say aware of the conditioned nature of our finite existence. And therefore open up to each other, acknowledging each other's challenges, difficulties, conditioning, and a sense of empathy, the coming together of acknowledging we're all finite, fallible human beings that don't have a monopoly on the truth, but we all aspire to live in the truth, so-called, the reality of our finite existence. And that sense of awareness is nurtured within us. We begin to be able to say, Mahalo, Namo Amida, thank you, to immeasurable life that embraces us just as we are. So this is the heart of what I hope we can appreciate as the Nembutsu tradition that our Honganji is based on. So, I retired, but towards the, I don't know, when I was assigned to the temple in San Francisco, I can't remember exactly what the conditions were, but I began to play with acronyms to come up with different ways of explaining what I think of as Buddhist ideas, thoughts. Because, well, there is one classic, oh, I know what it is. I started getting tired of using the term, the acronym GAS. Have you heard any of the ministers or speakers use the acronym GAS? G-A-S. And it is in reference to what we call the three poisons in Buddhism. The basic source of our disease is a reflection of having generated gas in the form of greed, anger, and actually technically it's ignorance, but for this acronym, the creator came up with stupidity. So we generate this gas, and we release the gas, and the world gets polluted. But anyway, so I use it, but I was saying, gee, isn't there something a little more positive, so-called, that we can think of? And so I started playing with acronyms, so I came up as a substitute, not substitute, but another way of expressing the idea of Buddhism is what? What's the goal of Buddhism? Clark, you can't remember? You better go back to Dharma school. No, it's enlightenment, to awaken, to become Buddhas. That's the title, right? Buddha is awakened ones. So we aspire to become Buddhas, awakened beings. Not for our own individual benefit or enjoyment, but so we don't mess up the world. So actually, that notion to make the world a better place, I think that kind of comes from a different perspective, because I think it's not so much to make the world a better place, it's not to pollute it. Because nature is pure, as it is. But it's due to human ignorance, greed, that we've created the environmental crisis that we're experiencing. But anyway, so as an alternate to the word enlightenment, awakening, I decided to use an expression of to come alive. The spiritual, religious aspiration we share in our tradition is to come alive. A-L-I-V-E. Is it there now? Okay. So, aware. So, basically, Buddhism is a religion of awareness. Not a belief, but an awareness of life. And it basically, boy, I keep saying basically as if I knew what the basic got from. Anyway, so essentially it's the idea or realization of the reality of our experience, which is what? Two terms, two eyes. Give you another chance, Clark. Remember, what are the two eyes of Buddhism? Not these eyes, not those eyes, but the first eye is impermanence. The reality, truth of impermanence. Right? Everything changes. I mean, even basic physics is, the second law of thermodynamics, entropy. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same. That's the natural condition of the physical world. Everything's constantly changing, never staying the same. And isn't that our experience? We see our hair getting white. Can't deny it. You can color it. But, we're not moving as we used to. We're slowing down. And you're all here because your loved ones have gone through the change we call death. But when did that process occur? Why? Because they were born. Or have you heard this joke about why did the Buddhist medical examiner get fired? I've been telling this all over the place, hoping I could find who created that joke. Why did they fire the Buddhist medical examiner? Anyone? Or have you heard it or know of it? Well, because he or she kept writing on their death certificate, cause of death, birth. But that's the fact. The moment we're born, we continue to change until a point, eventually, naturally, we'll go through another major dramatic change that we call death. But that's life. And so this is the awareness of that natural, inevitable process of existence that's always changing, never staying the same, in this dynamic expansion. And on that basis, the Buddha realized, therefore, there is no thing that exists independent, unchanging unto itself. And this is the second eye. We all exist interdependently. No one lives alone. You might feel lonesome, you might feel you're isolated, but the fact is, we're all existing because of everything around us. And we like to use the term, or I like to use the term, oneness. We live in a dynamic energy of life, of oneness, interdependency, interconnectedness. And from that awareness of our oneness is the experience or sense of love. To have the sense of connection with each other. That's the basis of love. Having a deep, profound sense of being together. With maybe it's another individual, but basically that's the general sense of having this sense of connection, love. And within that sense of love, we come to appreciate the inspiration of that love of life. Inspired. Inspired comes from what? The term was spirit. To be awakened or inspired by the spirit, which is also the term for breath. To receive that breath of life, which I understand is what aloha means originally. The breath of life, aloha. And to realize and sense that is the inspiration. That we realize that we're able to live. And this is right, the physical world, medically speaking, can't breathe, you're dead. But the breath, the air from which we appear, we didn't create it. We're messing it up. But it's the breath of life that we receive that occurs at the moment of our birth. That's why the obstetrician or the person delivering the baby makes sure that this infant is able to breathe. But it's interesting to consider, in as much as breath is used in other cultures, similarly to aloha, because in Japan, do you know the word for to live in Japan, Japanese, the Japanese term? Anyone familiar with that term? Well, you're not used to people asking you questions. I'll never get invited back again, but anyway, that's my thing now, to ask questions. But the Japanese term to live is ikiru. Ikiru. And that's broken down into iki, which is the Japanese term for breath, to breathe. Iki o suru. So to breathe is to live. And what was fascinating to me when I learned it was the German word. Does anyone know the German word for breath? It's atmen. And that comes from Sanskrit, which means being. So Germans use the term atmen to refer to breath. Being is to breathe. Any of you into mindfulness, meditation, and that kind of activity? Oh, you are? So what's the basic thing? Oh, okay. Well, basically it's to breathe. Meditation is just paying attention to your breath. That's what we settle down into. And again, it's not what we're doing, but it's the breath that's inspiring our body. So this is the idea that we come to become aware of the oneness of our life and the breath and life that we're receiving, from which we begin to sense a value, to value our existence. And that comes from being engaged, connected. So this is how I express the idea of awakening, is to come alive. And with that, by coincidence, not coincidence, I don't know, I was just reading something and I happened to come across this next passage from a Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman. Is anyone familiar with this person? I found out, or when I was reading about him, I learned that he was Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's mentor in college, and who made a profound impact on Dr. King, from which he began to open up his sense of ministry and purpose. And so that awareness is what I feel that I picked up in reading this particular passage, where Dr. Thurman, Reverend Thurman, is said to have encouraged Don't ask what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. So as I hope that we gather together to acknowledge the impermanence of our life by virtue of this hatsubon observance, but to recognize that it's the opportunity for us to realize what it is to come alive and to appreciate how those who have preceded us, because in the Buddhist view, or the Shin Buddhist view anyway, the idea of going to the Pure Land is not a final destination where we go for eternity. The Pure Land is described as the ideal environment for awakening to our Buddhahood. And by virtue of that transformation, that awakening, we are naturally, spontaneously drawn back to the world of delusion and pain to help guide others. And so this is how we receive this tradition, this custom, as those who have preceded us, returning to guide and encourage and awaken us to our own sense of aliveness. And from that, the sense of gratitude is expressed in our tradition as Namo Amida Butsubo, the oneness of the finite Namu being that I am, and the immeasurable Amida, immeasurable light and life of awakening that are shared together in this gesture Gassho, connected with the symbolism of the Omenju and orally affirmed as Namo Amida Butsu, or as Reverend Carey likes to offer, Mahalo. Mahalo. And so with that, I express my mahalo for all of you to participate in this tradition of encouraging and supporting each other in the process of awakening or to come alive. And so mahalo is, for me, an acronym for mindfully aware how appreciation links oneness. Mindfully aware how appreciation links oneness. Mahalo. And aloha, which is actively living open-hearted awareness. Actively living open-hearted awareness. So maybe I've used this expression sometimes, but we could say Namu Aloha Butsu. So that with that, I thank you for your attention and join you in this year's Makawao Honganji celebration. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Thank you, Reverend Kobata, for sharing with us your SOB stories, your sense of being stories. Could you please all rise so that we can sing the Gatha Namo Amida Butsu.
Oh
Don't ask yourself what the world means. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. The wisdom of the Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman, who lived from 1899 to 1981.
Please be seated. This concludes Saturday night's hatsubon service. On behalf of Makawao Honganji Mission, thank you to everyone who took time out of busy schedules to join us in person and via Zoom, observing this service in the memory of our departed loved ones. Thank you to Florida Goshi for ringing the Kancho temple bell, and to Reverend Ron Kobata for his SOB stories this evening. Announcements, I have one. For those hatsubon families who pre-ordered the Makawao Honganji famous and delicious chow fun, you may pick up your order at the temple kitchen out back. Other announcements? If not, please enjoy the rest of the evening. We have our food and game booths, I think, starting at 6 and the bone dance at 7. So enjoy yourself this evening. Thank you so much.
would like to thank our gracious sponsor, for sponsoring this beautiful World Memorial Lantern, also known as Chochin in Japanese. The beautiful World Memorial Lanterns are dedicated in memory of our ancestors, departed loved ones, and dear friends, and symbolize our joy, gratitude, for a profound reminder to live aloha every moment of each day of this unrepeatable life. Mahalo for your kokua.
No, I retired from San Francisco.